had coffee and everything, so can stay awake. And I know most of you have traveled over the last few days to come over here, so I hope at least he is feeling jet lagged. So let's see if we have a good session today. So today we have a packed session. As you know, there are a lot of presentations, and then we have a panel discussion as well. And in the evening, we'll have a networking reception as well, and followed by the award ceremony. So what I would like to do is kick off this summit with my presentation on eSIM, consumer eSIM, and the trends and what we are seeing from market perspective. And followed by that, we'll have multiple speaker presentation, and we have a lot of speakers already here, ready to go. So without further ado, I can just kickstart the presentation. While this gets loaded, just in terms of housekeeping, which I've been instructed to tell you guys, is just have your badges always displayed. Don't leave your luggage, otherwise that will be auctioned off by evening. Other than that, obviously in case of fire or emergency, we have to gather at the center and near the reception area. But I hope it won't come to that. Great. So I'm Neil Shah, Vice President Research at Counterpoint Research and one of the co-founders at the company. So we are one of the industry-leading, fast-growing industry research firm. We started with mobile, tracking the mobile phones, smartphones, almost 8 to 9 years ago. Three of us founded this firm. And since then, we have expanded quite a bit, covering with almost close to 100 analysts globally, and from end-to-end value chain, from semiconductors, foundries, to devices, infrastructure, connectivity, cloud, and applications and services. So, before joining Counterpoint, founding Counterpoint, I used to work as a senior analyst at strategy analytics and in multiple roles at Philips Electronics and I'm an engineer at heart, master's in telecommunications, and so this mobile is very close to what I track and do day in and day out. So how I would like to start off is just want to share my perspective on how the industry has evolved in terms of connectivity and so for how we have moved from different form factor generation and cellular generation from cellular from 1G to 5G. So if you look at the overall cellular mobile connectivity and how the generations have shifted from 1G to almost 5G now, you have seen significant change in terms of applications, use cases, as well as the form factors, right? From a T9 keyboard mobile phone to a touchscreen phone to a smartphone with more capacity to touch, more applications, and the connectivity. Every generation we have seen a change in form factor. And now with 5G, you might see foldables, and with maybe 6G, you will see AR glasses finally happening with cellular inside. So all these form factors changes, and we've seen the devices getting smaller, bigger. We're getting cellular on your watch, or you're getting cellular into different consumer applications. You might get cellular in the refrigerator as well soon. So this particular form factors change evolution has brought a change in even the SIM card form factor. It has evolved from 1FF to almost now what everyone is talking about is integrated SIM, eSIM, which we integrate within the SoC itself. So obviously the form factor change has multiple benefits. Everyone sitting here is aware on how it helps not only from helping operators to save provisioning costs in a bigger way, which is one of the big applications, but also in terms of OEMs and device manufacturers who have a smaller form factor. Someone like Apple can have a completely portless phone if it integrates the same within the SoC. And obviously customer satisfaction, can have complete digital journey. You don't have to go to a shop to buy a SIM card or get it shipped, and also it helps at a global level in terms of reducing the carbon footprint. So while form factors evolved, the cellular generations have evolved, the SIM card has become the central in terms of the connectivity, security, subscriber identity. But we have seen the eSIM ecosystem has also evolved considerably. So if you look at how we view the ecosystem as is in two, actually in three, but the two major parts. One is eSIM enablement, another is eSIM management. If you look at the eSIM enablement, this is mostly starting from, as I said, we track the entire value chain, which starts from the OS components to devices to infrastructure, and then on the management side, it's more on the software, the systems which is used to manage, orchestrate the entire eSIM within the devices. And at the center is the crucial piece, which are the operators, which is the link between the devices with eSIM and devices, the eSIM management in the cloud. So what we have seen, the evolution is a similar evolution as we are seeing in the digital transformation across the industry, right? So if you see this is basically the edge endpoint with eSIM, and now the entire management has moved from a server model to cloud-based model, and that is what we have seen across industry and across different applications, from client-server model to entire chip to cloud model. And obviously, MVNOs, MNOs have been the center to it, managing that connectivity piece and trying to get a little bit of value from this side, value from that side. Some of them are integrated, having their own eSIM management. Some of them have their own devices in different categories. But if you see, the value keeps on shifting from left to right, and obviously this is more of a subscription-based model, so the value captured over here is the highest in terms of recurring revenues. And connectivity piece is obviously the biggest when it comes to the revenue. But the entire the valuation you see, the different players, that has evolved considerably as we move from this chip to cloud model. So as we've seen, a lot of devices are getting eSIM enabled or capable, and this is happening not only because Google or Apple has pushed it, it is also happening at different devices, different form factors, which warrants eSIM, and it makes sense to have eSIM. So if you look at in terms of in 2022, right now, almost 12 brands are active with eSIM models across 75 models in smartphones. And in smartwatches, also close to 30 brands with close to 60 to 70 models within. And even for laptops, tablets, we are seeing a lot of eSIM in consumer side of things being adopted. But when you talk from the connectivity side of things, obviously there are more than 1,200 operators if you include MVNOs and stuff globally. The major 200 plus operators have already deployed eSIM management systems, and across 120 countries, and on an average, they're supporting 20 devices in their portfolio with eSIM. So some of these are ahead of the curve in terms of some are in middle of the journey and some are just starting, and many of them have not even started. That's why we have gathered here, because there are a lot of MVNOs, MNOs which are still skeptical about this entire implementation and how as an ecosystem we can help these operators to cross the chasm. So if you want to understand which operators are doing really well in terms of implementation, you can download a white paper which we recently published in a leader framework, which are the top operators which are doing really good in terms of e-simplifying. It could be a good case study for the entire industry. So how big the eSIM market is going to be? So if you look at in terms of our predictions, since we track all the devices shipments every quarter, every month, from smartphones to smartwatches to routers, gateways, tablets, PCs, close to 254 million smartphones with eSIM were shipped in 2021, and that is close to almost 18% of the total market in 2021. So 1 in 5 smartphones were eSIM capable, which was shipped last year. But when you add all the different devices, consumer devices from smartwatches, tablets, laptops, the total opportunity, cumulative opportunity is close to 5 billion devices capable of eSIM will be shipped in over the next 5 years, which is a huge opportunity in terms of the growing the entire install base of the eSIM based devices. So if you look at which categories are going to grow faster, obviously the ones with the smaller base is going to grow the fastest. But if you look at smartphones, which is a major revenue driver for most of the operators, and is going to be the key driver in terms of the growth, and almost 63% of the smartphones, 60% of all these consumer devices will be smartphones based eSIM. So the major driver, if you look at, as I said, Apple and Samsung and Google has been the first ones to drive the eSIM to the mainstream. But how fast is going to trickle down to sub $300, sub $200? It's up to a lot of different OEMs which are big in that particular segment, like Chinese OEMs like Oppo, Vivo, Xiaomi, Honor, and so forth. So obviously, we have seen many of these brands starting a lot of projects on integrating the eSIM within their smartphones. Some examples I'll share later on which brands are already doing which in sub $200, $300. Like we are seeing already in Japan, Oppo, Rakuten, they are bringing down eSIM to almost $200 smartphones. This is not it. There is B2C, but there is also B2B2C applications which will benefit from which touch consumers like healthcare, smart home, which are IoT type applications. But as we see in future, if SMTP Plus is being used for consumer IoT applications, it's going to drive a lot of different scale applications for indirect applications in terms of IoT. Other big opportunity which everyone cares about in this room, is, especially in this event, is roaming. So roaming is one of the biggest opportunities. If you look at the overall opportunity, which would be close to $4.6 billion in terms of eSIM-based revenue, just $4.6 billion out of a bigger chunk of roaming revenues globally. So there are close to 1.4 billion travelers traveling in different countries in a year. Obviously, with COVID situation, unfortunately, that has gone down close to 60 to 70% last couple of years. But if we get back to that level of at least 1 billion travelers a year, maybe next year or so, with that in assumption, by 2025, we'll see close to $4.6 billion in eSIM-based revenue potential, as the eSIM-based install base also grows, as I said earlier, to close to 3 to 4 billion just in for smartphones. So what is happening right now? So other notable trends, as I talk about example, what are the different brands, what is happening in 2021 in terms of smartphones? So iPhone 13 series brings dual eSIM, which is one of the biggest news. DSDA is being used a lot and is going to proliferate other applications like G&D, starting with BMW for DSDA based connected cars. Chrome OS adds support for eSIM. So last 2020, 2021 was a huge year. Was a huge year for Chromebooks, which drove the entire market in US and other markets. And with Chrome OS adding eSIM support is going to be huge with the bigger install base of Chromebooks in education, especially in US and other markets. So this is a big move as well. Obviously, the foldables and other new brands are also adding eSIM to their portfolio. It's not just Apple, Samsung, and Google. So Oppo also is bringing up eSIM to affordable A series in Japan, which I talked about, $250. Other new categories which also I mentioned are potential is obviously the TWS market, which is growing in bonkers in terms of capability. The attach rate is very high in terms of TWS, and many of them are using TWS every day. And imagine if it is also connected cellularly, so you can activate your AI assistant within your ear. You don't have to remove your phone from your pocket. So obviously the battery life is going to be a concern for these because they are very but that is another problem to solve. It's an engineering problem. Then obviously connected bikes. This is another big segment which is we are estimating close to 1 billion CPEs, 5G, 4G CPEs to be shipped over the next decade, or this decade, 2021 to 2030. And we are seeing a lot of consumer handset OEMs are also entering the space in terms of Samsung, Techno, Oppo, Huawei, Honor. Everyone is launching a 5G CPE, which they're bundling it through their own channels into consumer and partnering with different operators. Surveillance cameras, tablets, Wi-Fi routers. Again, as we see, most of the 5G devices, the addition of eSIM makes much more sense. And because of the pandemic, what has happened is a lot of operators are now thinking to go completely digital. The installation cost for a CP router to send someone home, put a SIM card, activate it, it should be pure plug and play, right? It should be completely digital. So this is a significant opportunity with FWA, fixed wireless access, as well, apart from smartphones and other smaller fragmented categories. So another big announcement was support for MEP in Android 13, which means as Android proliferates across different devices, it's going to be very naturally adopted within the Android ecosystem, which is close to 88%, 84% of the overall smartphone market, and even in tablets and smartwatches, Android is going to be. So this is the biggest question: when will see the first eSIM based smartphone, right? So obviously there are some companies which are going to be critical to bring eSIM within the phone. Obviously players like Qualcomm, Apple, MediaTek, the three, and Samsung, the four big chipset SoC manufacturers, will have to decide, partner with different players like Valid, Thales, GND, and others to integrate the eSIM, IUICC within their SoCs. Already Qualcomm 800 series, 8th generation, Gen 8, which they're calling right now, or 800 series earlier, supported eSIM by default, but we haven't seen any implementation. Maybe we might see an implementation this year or maybe start of next year within some smartphones, premium smartphones in the industry. And this is the last slide, and this is the biggest question, another big question, when we'll see eSIM only iPhone, right? It's going to happen, it's just a matter of when rather than if it will happen. Apple is moving in that direction, and if this happens, this is going to be a huge change and will drive a wave of eSIM growth and adoption across different OEMs. Operators will also have to rejig the strategy if Apple is going to bundle its the data plan within its Apple One subscription. It just want to remove the friction for Apple user to go to a operator store and buy an iPhone. So you can buy everything from Apple. You don't have to buy and just pay a monthly bill to Apple. And Apple won't like that. It would add significant services revenue, which is almost crossing $72 billion a year for Apple. It might be almost triple if Apple starts adding data subscriptions to within its installed base of 800 million iPhone users. It's a huge opportunity for iPhone. We'll have to see how operators react to that and if it happens and if Apple does that. So this is a theory right now. That is our assumption. If that happens, what will happen? So yeah, so if you have any questions, I can take. I think we have 5 minutes, I guess.
I have a question.
Sure.
My name is Michel Weimer, and I saw you also showed a number of consumer IoT devices with consumer eSIM. I was wondering how you envisage how this will look like to the consumer or the person, because you need to provision it.
Correct.
It's not a smartphone, so you need to connect it to the smartphone or the laptop. You need a screen to.
Yeah. That's a great question, and that is where I think industry players are working on different solutions. Like you see Thales InstaConnect, or you see SMDP Plus, where you just send a request and add it to your plan, and automatically downloads a profile over the air and activates itself. Activates. There won't be obviously QR code scanning or possible, right? So it is going to be through cloud basically, and if you add a device identifier into your solution, and it will be directly provisioned from the operator. So that is one way, and obviously the industry working on LPA. So let's see what happens with that. So I think we have some speakers which will touch base on that today. Good question. Anything else? Yeah.
You, you showed the big increase in terms of number of devices between 21 and 26. Is there any impact from the component shortage that you could expect?
That's a great question. So component shortage has been an issue over the last like 2020, 2021, and since the pandemic, obviously most of the component shortage has been happening on the mature nodes, not on the leading nodes. So what has happened is over the last 2 years, all of these foundries have added extra capacities to right from TSMC, UMC, SMIC. They've added a lot of different capacities for churning out those different chipsets. Basically, the shortage was across power management ICs with the peripheral components, not in key SOCs, basically. So we'll see the situation alleviating already. Some industries will face it even longer because they were not allocated. Like our automotive, we continue to see shortages. But the mainstream consumers, tablets, smartphones, laptops, smartwatches, it should be fine. Because most of these are, if you look at the top 8 or 10 players, control almost 80-90% of the market in most of these segments, right? And someone like Apple, which controls 20% of the market, has a very robust supply chain. And someone like Samsung, another 18%. So, and then you have Oppo, which is a conglomerate, right? So with 3-4 brands, so they also have scale enough to have supply allocated to them. So it should not be an issue for consumer applications, but more for automotive, I would say, in near time. Hi.
I'm Satoshi from Japan. My question is, from the consumer perspective, is there any the biggest challenge, biggest benefit for consumers? My understanding is that ISIM and eSIM, the difference on the technology side, but I want to know how the customer journey can be changed on eSIM to ISIM transition.
That's a great question, and it's not easy to answer right now. Coming from industry, from the research side of things, obviously OEMs will be able to answer. But what I believe is, in terms of customer journey, for if you look at ISIM being integrated within the smartphone, for example, within the SoC itself, for example, for Apple, if Apple integrates ISIM within the iPhones, tablets, iPads, so mostly players like Apple will try to control most of the provisioning process in that sense. So it will be very seamless for any iPhone user to add a watch, to add an iPad, or to even MacBooks. Right now MacBooks doesn't have eSIM, but in future obviously they will have, as most of the Apple portfolio is now on ARM-based SoCs, right? So having said that, customer journey will be slightly different because compared to normal eSIM, traditional eSIM, because most of when it goes to iSIM, it will be mostly controlled by device OEMs. Obviously, operators will also have some say in some markets, but when you look at the bigger players, which will initially drive iSIM, will try to control most of it. So from that perspective, if you are in that ecosystem, it will be easier. That is my understanding.
Well, thanks for the presentation. Following up on that question, plus the fact that you showed consumers are going to have more and more devices and it's going to be more seamless. How much do you see the for consumer data input, data interaction going to increase? Do you see like a huge explosion of increase with coming of this technology?
Yeah, that's a great question again. So as obviously as you add more devices with cellular data, the data requirement will increase, and for someone, for operator, obviously it's great because now you will have to track not just ARPU but ARPA, right? Per account, how many devices, how many, and you can have a pool of data which can be allocated to a particular family or particular user, which can use across devices. That could be one way of looking at it, and obviously data will increase depending on if something like laptop or tablet becomes more connected, right? So that will be more data hungry than a smartwatch. So definitely there will be a data explosion as you have more cellular devices coming in. Yes, I think we are time. Maybe I can introduce the next speaker as well. Okay, so slides.